Often in history, the unexpected happens suddenly. The powerful are humbled. The humble are exalted. Those who are at the peak of their power fall very quickly and much more spectacularly. The story of Western civilization begins with Israel and with ancient Greece. We're going to talk about the Greeks today, here on the Mediterranean Sea. They were able to trade with Africa, with Europe, with Asia. They were able to become very wealthy, very influential as well. But they were a people who sought out, especially during the 400s, the golden age of Athens, what is good, what is true, and what is beautiful. They invented philosophy, a word that means love or lover of wisdom, a philosopher, a lover of wisdom. And you had people like Socrates, who got very close to the truth. They even started to move beyond the polytheism of the ancient world, and Socrates would say God without the S, or gods, lowercase g. And so they were getting close to objective truth because they sought it out. And they also had many advances. They were great at taking all the knowledge at the time and putting it almost like in something you would think today like a Wikipedia, an encyclopedia of all the knowledge that exists in the world. And someone like Euclid in the 300s put together his Elements, a book of all of the geometry at the time. He pretty much standardized geometry. He became the father of the subject. And one beautiful picture I want to show you is this one, a triangle in between two circles. He's laying out this proposition, all of these constructions, line by line. He's saying, let AB be the given finite straight line. Thus it is required to construct an equilateral triangle on the straight line AB. And going forth and forth for each line, for each circle, the center of the circle, and so forth. But he's starting out with these definitions before he even starts writing the first book. He's saying, number one, a point is that which has no part. So think about that. A point has no part, does not make a line. A line, however, is breadthless length. It's just a line. It doesn't have breadth to it. Now, this is the deductive way of thinking, of looking at the world, where you're looking for the objective truth and you're trying to, say, pluck the fruit from it. The alternative would be the inductive method. Now, the inductive method is where you're trying to, say, almost in a subjective way, get experience from the world. Not totally subjective, but to, say, learn through doing things. However, the Greeks, very abstractly, were looking at these ideas from mathematics to philosophy to science to medicine, and they were, again, with a rational worldview, putting all of this together and trying to make sense out of what life was around them. And you have someone like Aristotle, a student of Plato, and Plato, I should mention, was a student of Socrates. Aristotle wrote a book called Nicomachean Ethics about how to obtain the good life. You can imagine a self-help book about the same subject today, but someone back in ancient Greece was writing about that. So they're searching for what is good. They're searching for what is true. And also what is beautiful. If you ever look at a Greek temple, it has such order to it, such structure, the columns, the angles, that shape, that lovely shape of the triangle. You can imagine why we use in America here, like with our buildings in Washington, D.C., similar architectural styles. But this order, this beauty, went all across Greece. It went into the fields that I already mentioned before, medicine like Hippocrates, anything you can think of. They basically invented what we know as the drama, or the ancient type of play, which leads to all of our modern entertainment. If you like to watch movies, you can thank the Greeks. Their study of history. You have people that are writing down history. You have Homer. Homer's writing a book about the journey, or the Odyssey, or Achilles in the Iliad. And so there's such a wealth, such a treasure of culture that they have. And later on in Roman times, the Romans would often note, there's a bug flying by the camera, maybe you see that there. The Romans would also note that these Greeks almost seem sort of lazy in their later years. They weren't, say, as industrious as the Romans were. These agricultural Romans who would fight their battles. The Greeks, they would say, just sit around all day thinking. And so, they sought out what is good, what is true, and what is beautiful. Those three things. However, they did have their downfall, at least from their pinnacle of greatness, at the end of the 400s. The Peloponnesian War, a war that they fought ultimately without a strategic way of achieving victory over the Spartans. These Athenians were trying to, say, use their superior ships to fight this war, and the Spartans were better on land. So they were trying to come up and siege the city. But you could never siege Athens, right? That is until a plague hits. The plague of Athens was the greatest plague of the ancient world. They say it came from Egypt, with the differentiation of the cold and the hot there. Cold during the night, hot during the day, maybe led to this disease. I'm not really sure. But this plague wiped out a third of Athens, their population, and a lot of their soldiers were lost, especially the young people in this plague. And so suddenly, what seemed impossible, Sparta gaining dominance over the Athenians, it's what happened. And so they lose that title of the greatest Greek city-state. And it goes now to the Spartans. But the Spartans, trying to gain an empire themselves, a greater empire, they are defeated. Skipping ahead a little bit, we have Alexander the Great, who takes his father's armies after his father dies and goes into Asia. He goes through Persia to India, reaches, say, a point, turns around, but he's like, I'm going to conquer more of the world. He was wanting to conquer pretty much everything he could think of that he knew existed at the time. However, he died unexpectedly at age 32. His empire was spreading Greek culture, all of that Greek culture we've been talking about, to the rest of the world. These ideas, these longings for, again, what is good, what is true, and what is beautiful. This worldview of Plato, of abstract thinking. It's not like the other cultures at the time, Persia, India, China, Egypt, that they did not have their own advancements. But what separated the Greeks, I believe, is that they sought out truth for its own sake. They wanted to know what was good, what was beautiful, for its own sake. Euclid puts together his book of geometry, not because he wants to make money off of it, but because it's beautiful. And so, in Greece, the seeds were ready to be planted. Alexander the Great, though, dies, and his empire split into 4 different parts, which in turn fight against one another. Soon after, we're talking about 100 years or more so, the Roman Republic really comes to its dominance. And then the Roman Empire, where Jesus is born. He is born in this empire of Rome under Augustus Caesar, and by his life, death, and resurrection, he changes the world forever. He sends out apostles with such great confidence. One, named St. Paul, a person who persecuted the early Christians. He comes to believe in what is true. He comes to believe in Jesus himself. And he goes to the city of Athens. Let us now read from the book of Acts, chapter 17. And so, those there on the Areopagus take St. Paul, and they say to him, "May we know what this new teaching is which you present? For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean." Now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. So Paul, standing in the middle of the Areopagus, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all men life and breath and everything." And he's saying this with the temple to Athena in the background, the Parthenon. "And he made from one every nation of men to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their habitation, that they should seek God in the hope that they might feel after him and find him. That they might feel after him and find him. Yet he is not far from each one of us, for in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your poets have said," he quotes their poets, "for we are indeed his offspring. Being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the deity is like gold or silver or stone, a representation by the art and imagination of man. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all men everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all men by raising him from the dead." So Euclid, he was imagining these shapes in his head, the triangles, trying to see how it works out. His imagination had some bearing in reality, of course. But now, as they were grasping for truth, God is giving them the truth. Christ himself, the message of Christ. Now when they heard, quoting again, of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, "We will hear you again about this." And so we know that Greece had one of the greatest influxes of new Christian converts in these early years because they were prepared. They had sought what was good, what was true, and what was beautiful. And now, St. Paul was coming to them with Jesus Christ himself, who, as we know, is the way, the truth, and the life. I can't neglect to read from the book of John as well. John is using a word that a Greek philosopher coined, logos. This is a word which means the reason or the rationality of God. St. John, in the translation, calls it the Word. So this is where we get that word from. And it means, of course, again, logos. So the rationality of God, which was Jesus. Verse 1 of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Jesus was the light that led these ancient Greeks to achieve anything that was true, that was good, that was beautiful. And he was preparing them for him, as he often prepares us in our lives when we seek him out in earnest. He will lead us to him. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. In our own lives, Jesus is preparing us. He is the light that we are following, that we are seeking. Our hearts are made for him. Our hearts desire his love. And in Greece, what was good, what was true, what was beautiful that they achieved, that was through God. All good comes from God. So let us look back on our own lives. How has God worked through our lives to make our hearts ready, to purify our souls, and to give us greater hope for his promises? May God bless you. The Sacred Heart for the world for the Sacred Heart. Thank you.